Welcome, everybody, to DAT Poker Podcast, episode 120 for March 15th, 2022. This here podcast presented by Daniel Negreanu's Masterclass of Poker, masterclass.com. Head on over there. Take the masterclass. What is it, $100? It's worth every penny. Can't believe how cheap training sites are these days and have been for a long time. It's well worth the investment. I'm your host, A. Schwartz, alongside producer extraordinaire, Roscoe P. Coltrane.
It's only a game. Why you have to be mad?
Why you have to be so mad, Briz? I love Briz. All right, and Terrence Chan in the hinterlands of BCT. How are you?
I'm doing great. We're less than 3 months away from the World Series of Poker. It'll be my last World Series of Poker as a dad of only one. So it might be my last World Series of Poker ever. Got second one on the way. So we'll see if I have time for any more World Series of Pokers after this one. Congratulations,
sir. You slipped another one by the goalie. That's fantastic.
That's right. Yeah. Somehow at my age, they were just like they're going with a cane across the finish line, just getting in there.
So good. I like the blurry office background. That's an interesting one. Daniel Negreanu in Las Vegas in his lair, full of gold and frankincense and myrrh, I guess. Daniel, how are you?
Watching the Golden Knights get trounced by the Winnipeg Jets. I heard your drop with Briz. So I wanted to. I was listening to a pod this morning, and they told the McGillney story. I loved Alexander McGillney.
Oh, yeah.
He's the best.
Funny dude. Like one of the questions he was asked, was like, "Are you feeling any pressure? With this, the third period." He goes, "Pressure. The only pressure I feel is after a coffee in the morning."
There's a famous quote about
pressure.
Somebody, he was playing for Keenan, I want to say, and Keenan was on him, screaming at him. And then and somebody was asking him if he turns to Keenan in front of the whole team and says, "Fuck off, Mike." Like,
it was like this.
Rush.
Iron Mike Keenan was doing his thing, and he's like, "You think I give a shit what you say? Putin threatened my entire family. You think I'm afraid of you?" Like, the fuck, dude.
McGillney was just the best. He should be in the Hall of Fame.
One more. Because Matt Sundin told me this to my face when I was with him. He talked about McGillney and how McGillney was the most skilled player he ever played with. And he remembers being in the gym with him. And McGillney's maybe 31 at the time. And Sundin says to him, he's like, if you keep training hard in the gym, you could play like another 5-6 years. And McGillney just looks at him and goes, "Why the fuck would I want to do that?"
Oh, he was the best. You get him into the Hall of Fame. Should be in the Hall of Fame for sure.
Dude scored like a 76 goal season in the dead puck era. Come on.
Crazy. All right. Speaking of sports, off the top, we have a sad note. More importantly, the cricket world in Australia lost one of their ambassadors in the last 10 days or so, Shane Warne, a legendary Australian cricketer and big poker player. Always was a great ambassador for poker. I think he was an 888 sponsor pro for a long time. Just a huge, we're up here in the Northern Hemisphere. We don't have any clue on how big cricket is, but trust me, in the Southern Hemisphere, it's like hockey is in Canada. It's huge. And the man was a legend bowler and also great for poker. He loved poker and was a great ambassador for years and years and years, and a great friend of many of the high profile poker players. I'm guessing Daniel had some interaction with him as well. But died at a terrible young age of 52 to a heart attack. And, that kind of stuff. I'm 54. We're all sort of facing our mortality at this level. And a guy like that in shape, he just drops dead of a heart attack. And you're like, Jesus Christ, enjoy every day because it could be your last.
Yeah, I love that guy. He was awesome. You talk about celebrity, like he was literally like Brad Pitt in Australia. I mean, you go to the club with him or whatever, and he's got like 40 tens, around him. But it wasn't like that. It wasn't like, they weren't not hired help. Just everybody liked to be around the guy. He knew how to party. He loved poker. He also had like just a natural humility about him. Like that's what I always notice with people in his stature when they're beloved. Like one of two things happens to you. You either get a big head and realize you're hot shit or think you're hot shit, and then you become annoying people, or you just stay who you were and like appreciate it. And he was always on that, he was always really, really cool about everything.
I think that I'm near full power.
Did a lot, at the Crown Casino.
Who are you referring to there?
Yeah, but no, Shane was awesome. Like it's sad, like you said, it's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, bigger than life. Danny, where's your toast to Shane Warne? Do you have you don't have a glass of wine? Are you in training? Is this a?
I drank once this year because like I did fat December and then I started to get lean. So I've lost to like 11 pounds this year, just trying to get lean because I know I'm going to get fat again during the World Series. So I want to make sure that I'm like, I'm like 156 pounds right now. I think I'm going to go into the World Series weighing a stealth 150, and then by the time it's over, push about 160.
All right, sounds good. T, and does that sound like what you're going to do?
No. I just stay fat year round now. Fuck it. Like, not even going to bother. Not even pretending.
I love that fat for you is like 138.
No, I'm getting up there too. I'm getting a 150, but yeah, like I said, second kid on the way. I actually probably should get my butt in shape. It's about the only time.
All right, so here's what we're going to do. This week, we're going to talk about high stakes poker. The much anticipated return, season 9, is 4 episodes deep now. We talked about episode 1 and 2 on the last show, and it wasn't super exciting. Episode 1 was maybe one of the most boring high stakes poker episodes ever. Episode 2 picked it up a little bit, had some fun. Episodes 3 and 4 really started to get interesting. There was a crew change into episode 4, and we'll talk about that in a bit. But let's kick things off with episode 3 that Daniel, of course, was involved in. So the lineup is Ivy, a fellow named Jonathan Gibbs, of course, Daniel, Patrick Antonius, Doyle, Tom Dwan, and JRB. And before we get started, present company accepted, I want to just talk quickly about JRB because he is other than, as I say, and I love watching Daniel play, but JRB tells a story great, and we've got one of those later. He's just fun to have in the game. He mixes it up. He bugs Doyle. He's playing hands that, that other people don't. Does JRB top your, as a viewer, Terrence and Daniel, does JRB top or crack your top 3 of most interesting guys in high stakes poker history? Daniel, why don't you give us?
Well, I think JRB is like important for high stakes games for like lots of reasons. You mentioned, his willingness to gamble, the speed of play. He's really quick. He's conversational. He's always shooting the shit. He's willing to do whatever. And it's part of how he was able to sort of create an exclusive game with some, high stakes fish, if you will, where, he can play in it because he's just got, and it's not, the thing is with some people, it's inauthentic where they're like acting. JRB's just being JRB. Like, broke living JRB, that's a thing. I mean, he's been in and out of money most of his poker career, but he's good for the game. First of all, he's not that good at poker, which is good, right? 2, he's loosey-goosey, right, which is good. Sloppy, which is good. Drinks. You know what they say, like you should only have 2 glasses of wine a day? Well, he does that because he gets the biggest glass ever. It's just like 3 bottles in each glass. And he's like, 2 glasses a day. But no, he's great for the game. Makes everybody feel comfortable. He's exactly the kind of pro, I use that with quotes, that is what draws like the kind of people, like, could you think about the modern day high stakes pro today that plays these high rollers? Like they can't entertain in the same way that JRB does. So I don't know where he ranks, but he's certainly up there in terms of a glue guy. And he's got more going for him because he's not that good at poker.
In fairness, he's a big enough guy to get away with drinking the larger wine. I don't think JRB been making 150 pounds like either of us. But yeah, I think he is a lot of fun. And as Daniel said, there's an authenticity to it where he's not trying to be something he's not, because if there were, he wouldn't have been able to do it for so long and get away with it for so long because people spot inauthenticity very easily, I think, especially in contexts like that where you're playing in these private high roller games. And yeah, other than that, he's great. He's fun. He's conversational. He, you mentioned, he's needling people and rubbing people and busting balls, but it's never that I've seen in like a mean spirited way or an aggressive way. It's a good time. Like it's just like the guy you want at your party to liven things up. And it's never, there's so many people in poker who have made their name essentially just by being jerks, and just being out of line all the time. And that's not JRB. He's just there to have a good time and bust balls, but in a fun way, I think.
And he has a rapport with everybody, right? Like for him to just needle Doyle throughout the episode was fantastic. Doyle, have you ever read Super System? Like, what? Did you really just ask him that? That's so good. He's like, if he was a hockey player, he'd be good in the room, right? That's what you'd say. He's good in the room.
For sure.
All right, so let's move on. So I really want to quickly talk about, so Gabe and AJ as commentators, right? I think as much as I enjoyed them, like in the first few years of high stakes poker, I want to say it's maybe past. Like I'm having a hard time getting into it. You know, Gabe makes a quick reference to Travis Bickle, the dealer, and I get it. And, you know, maybe 5% of the people who are watching it are old enough to get the taxi driver reference that he drops. And not that it's, but I'm just saying, I think maybe it's time that didn't look so good. Terrence, I know you had some thoughts on that.
Yeah, I don't think he's been good either. And it's not really about like the analysis. I mean, I know Daniel talks about this a lot where he says like, oh, you know, a lot of the people watching these things aren't there to talk about, you know, blockers and bluff catchers and range versus range and all this kind of stuff. But in a way, I think poker in 2022 has evolved in a lot of, to that sense that people do require some measure of it. And a lot of times Gabe's just like, well, he's putting them on ace queen. And it's like, well, there's got to be a little more depth. These are like, some of these people are among the best poker players in the world. Even the ones that are not at like the A tier, most of them are still pretty good who are in this lineup. And I think we need a little bit more than that. There was the thing that tilted me in like episode 4, like when he didn't know how to say like, you know, is it Garrett Adelstein? Is it Adelstein? It's like, this is your job to know how to pronounce this dude's name. I think it's kind of insulting to this guy if you don't know how to say his name. You didn't even bother to ask before the. I don't know. I think it. Yeah, I agree. It was fun back in the day, and it was nostalgic. And I think he was better at his craft back in the day. But I'm not a big fan, just like you right now, Adam.
Okay, so this is interesting because I don't know what podcast number is this. Do we know?
120.
120. All right. In 120 podcasts, we've had some disagreements here and there about stuff. I don't think I've ever disagreed with you two more than on this topic.
Wow. Let's
like,
go.
Not even close. First and foremost, right? So, so there's plenty of poker available, like, you know, streams and different things that are high end, that are like, you know, you have the Nick Schulmans, you have that kind of stuff. There's lots of that, right? One of the things that made high stakes poker iconic was the simplicity of the commentary, right? Sure, Gabe is saying things like, oh, I think he puts him on ace queen, because he's talking about it from his poker brain, which relates to the, you know, the average person that's not studied, you know, combos and combinatrix and, you know, using solvers, right? AJ's, and I like the simplicity. I like the fact that they let the game do the talking. And as far as the jokes go, the Travis Bickle joke, right? If you use Dennis Miller as an example, right? And for me, he's too much, but like Dennis Miller will tell jokes where I don't even know if I can talk, but when you do, they're really funny, right? So it's okay if, you don't get all the jokes, but you get some of them. I like the laid back atmosphere. I like the fact that it's a throwback to the old days. And I don't think them reinventing themselves and trying to do anything different than they did is the way to go. Obviously, you know, we're going to have more shows. The problem with the show for me is the fact that it's like behind a paywall, right? So your clientele or your audience is going to be, you know, like Terrence mentioned and like Adam mentioned, guys who want to see, you know, high level commentary and things like that. Whereas on GSN, these guys are perfect for like mainstream, you know, a draw. But I think that what we're seeing, because so much footage today or so much stuff is being shot behind PokerGo, so it's for that audience, that this is so different from that. But it's in an environment that doesn't speak to the audience that would really appreciate it the most, I think.
I do agree with you with letting the people talk, because I mean, that's unquestionably, Adam dropped a hint to this earlier, but that is the best part, honestly, of the show. Sometimes not even just watching the hands, it's listening to the stories and watching the banter at the table. I think a lot of it is fantastic. And they do a good job of that, if not getting in the way, but still sometimes like I want a little bit more than, you know, you just put some on ace queen. Like it's too simplistic at this point. Like let's talk about
why though. Like, listen, you know what happens after these episodes? I'm going to be doing hand breakdown videos on YouTube. Jonathan Little will. You'll get like an opportunity to discuss these things on a like a high level.
Not everybody's gonna go that deep. Like Adam said, everybody's been looking forward to this, right?
For those people, they get that. But I think for this one, the idea is just to entertain, right? This isn't like a poker study show. Like if you look at the way people are playing with straddles and fucking Dirk calling raises with Jack Deuce suited, it's not like a poker lesson. It's not a show that you watch to be like, I want to learn how to play better, and you watch high stakes poker.
But the question is, if I'm watching the show, I'm thinking, and I'm kind of an amateur player, I'm thinking, why is this person thinking? What is this person even thinking about? And you have to make an accurate assessment of what is this person thinking about. And I don't think Gabe's equipped to say, like, what is this person thinking about?
Well, no, but Gabe is equipped to say it in his way that he would interpret it after playing. He's played poker for 50, 60 years, right? And he played poker pre-solver. He played poker in an area where, like, the vast majority of people that were poker fans in 2004 that stopped watching, they'd still understand Gabe, right? But if they watch some of our other broadcasts, as much as I like them, they'd be like, what the fuck is all this talk? Like, they wouldn't get it. So, again, I wouldn't like Gabe and AJ doing the super high roller bowl or doing the US Poker Open coming up and things like that. Like, they're not equipped for that. But a made-for-TV show, fly on the wall, as you said, they tell jokes in between moments, but then they just let the players talk, and it allows everybody in the audience to sort of be a fly on the wall and feel like they're in a living room watching JRB just tell stories and stuff. I like it.
Yeah, no, I agree. So I agree with both of you a little bit. First off, the jokes and stuff have fallen flat for me this time. And I like these guys. Like, I'm ready to like them. I just haven't been entertained. To your point, Daniel, they're supposed to entertain. I don't want to hear Gabe talk about blockers and shit like that. I just wanted to be funny. And I haven't found that this, and maybe it gets better. I don't know. We're only 4 episodes in, and maybe it improves. But so far, I've been a bit disappointed is all I'd say there. But I understand what both of you are saying. Let's fire into some hands. One other quick thing I want to ask you about, Daniel. I noticed at the beginning of episode 3 that JRB had everybody covered, and I was a bit surprised by that, given your discussion earlier and our general thoughts that maybe JRB isn't the best player at the table. I think he had 250,000. You were closest. I think you had like just over 200. But like a bunch of people had 100K. Ivy had 175. Antonius had 100. Tom only had 80,000 or something. So I'm just curious, and what was there specific add-on rules? Could anybody add on at any time? Why do you think people weren't covering JRB?
Well, yeah, I mean, I had 200 in front of me because I was up 100, right? So like I bought in for 100. Everybody just bought in for 100. It was, sometimes people buy in for more. There are no rules in terms of adding on. You can put on as much money as you want. JRB just decided he's going to sit down a little heavy because he's probably used to buying in for that amount when he plays 200 and 400 games, in his private games or anything or something like that. So I think it's just a personal preference. You're going to see, like you saw the first, 3, and even these next 3 won't be as big. But the game is going to skyrocket in size because it's going to 500, 1,000, and the buy-in will be 250,000. So you're going to see some huge stacks. Garrett Adelstein, another guy who's going to buy in really big and always want to have everybody covered. But yeah, I don't make much of like JRB. I don't think JRB even looked around the table to see what was out there. He just bought in for what he thought, was normal to buy in for.
Yeah, if anybody should add on, it's probably Durr, who had position on him for the show. But that's probably a semantic thing, and it can cascade because then the person on Durr's left can buy in for more too, and you give away that positional disadvantage. But if JRB is given the most action at the table, theory would dictate then the guy on his left would probably want to match his stack, but maybe Durr didn't feel like comfortable playing whatever.
Yeah, for sure. So Daniel mentioned earlier the Jack Deuce, and we were talking about Durr, so this is a good segue. There was a super funny hand at the beginning of episode 3 where Doyle raises with ace-10. Tom calls with the Jack Deuce suited. The flop comes 10-4 deuce. Doyle bets. Tom calls. The turn's a 7. Doyle checks. Tom bets the bottom pair. And Doyle calls. River's a jack, giving Tom 2 pair. Doyle does so check, bet, call, and Doyle, when he sees Durr's hand, it's so funny. He just like, when you get beat by that hand, you should never get beat on, and everybody kind of has that in their head. They look at it and they look at their hand and they kind of toss it up in the air and they go, nice hand, in that tone that we all use when you don't really mean it. Doyle flashed it at Tom. I thought that was pretty funny. Yeah,
this is a perfect example. This hand that you talk about, it's a perfect example of what Doyle's been saying for so long on these TV cash games. Because he's been like, he always wins for the most part. And like, he's got like even younger like vibe to him, and he's even more in there. But like, when I saw him do that, I saw him look at that hand and in his brain say, man, these games are good. These fucking idiots. Like, it's like, I can just sit here and play tight, play the nuts, and you're going to call raises with Jack Deuce suited to try to outplay me and be fancy. And Doyle said, the job is to win the money. It's not to look flashy. It's not to make all these crazy moves. And Doyle, for many years when he played these cash game shows, he just played pretty solid, didn't do anything too crazy. And he won, he'd win the money. He'd be steady. he'd be slow and steady, win himself 100K, right? Which nobody would pass up, right? And he did it without the flash. So I think when he saw the Jack Deuce, it's like, he's like, this kid just still fucking nuts. You know, like he still don't care about money. You know,
and JRB is just as still playing the premiums. Tom, like he just loves to give the needle. It's just great. I love having JRB in these games. It's so fun. And the next hand's interesting, and it's a hand that Daniel plays. And Tom is under the gun. He limps with the ace jack offsuit. Antonius right behind him raises to 2,000 with the 1080 spades. Daniel, you're next to act, and you flat with kings. It folds back to JRB in the big blind. He's got the ace 5 off. He calls. Now Tom with the ace jack. Remember, he limped under the gun. He folds. And Daniel, you give it the and I think AJ and Gabe kind of talk about your hands, and I don't know if they're talking that maybe you got your paws ready to pounce. And you 4-bet here. Obviously, the doors have been open for you. You 4-bet to 32,000. So you basically click it back.
Well, he made it 14, not 15.
Oh, sorry, 14.
He made it 14, and then I made a small 4-bet. Yeah,
Made it to 32. Tom calls. Now the flop comes Jack 10-4. So Tom flops the top pair. He checks. You bet. He shoves, and you call pretty quickly. And you decide to run it twice. And so obviously, this hand. First, I want to ask your opinion about flatting there with the kings, right? I mean, you've got a limp from Tom that who knows what that hand is. You've got a raise, an isolation raise there from Patrick. And then you've got some people behind you that I'm wondering how much the people behind you went into your your flat with kings there versus Tom's limp.
The people behind me as well as Tom's limp both played a similar role in terms of why I did that. But I actually did a video about this. We just shot it last night. It'll be on YouTube on this specific hand and my decision to just flat with the kings, which we're talking about. For one, you got JRB in the big blind and he makes the call with ace 5 off, like for a 5x raise when he gets, that's not good, right? Like that's just too loosey-goosey to call a 5x, but you're going to get some of that. But the bigger thing is I know that Tom, he's willing, he limps pretty strong too. So I thought this is a good situation where I could be setting him up, right? Because if I didn't, just flat there, like he may limp raise with some hands like ace queen suited, obviously queens, jacks, ace king, et cetera, et cetera. Now I think the more interesting decision after I do that is, let me just say one of the key reasons why I do that. The issue here is when he limps and Patrick makes it 2,000. If I re-raise there, I'll just say flat out, I'm not going to be balanced there. My re-raising range is going to be way too strong, right? So when I know that I'm like, if I re-raise there, people are going to know it's just a monster. It's too nutted.
But what I'll interrupt you here because what's your calling range?
Oh, really wide. My calling range is super wide. My calling range includes 7-8 suited, 6-7 suited, pocket fours, king queens, a whole bunch of hands, right? That's my ace 3 suited, ace 4 suited, all that stuff. The issue is if I re-raise Patrick after the limp in the race from early position from that position, now my range is just so like nutted, ace king, aces, kings, queens, some jacks, whatever, but like it's going to be pretty strong. So when I know that, I'm going to have to throw some of my strong hands into my flatting range to get some action in some spots. So when I do that, and then I sort of contradict myself when I say this and I explain this and I did it in the video. So now, Durr re-raises. So you would think based on what I said before that I would just flat again.
Yeah.
Right?
Because you like this small 4-bet, that's never ace wheel suited. Or
exactly. So my 4-bet is like uber strong. So why would I do that there? One, because I think I know, Tom Dwan, when he gets a price, he can't resist even when he's up against the nutted hand, typically, right? So I'm laying him a very good price with ace jack. So he's hoping I have ace king or kings and that like he's drawing okay and that I don't have exactly aces. And he feels like he's so confident in his post-flop play that, he can get away with it. I don't think it was a good call on his part with ace jack off. It's just like destroyed against what am I bluffing with? If I do have ace 3, ace 4 suited, sure, maybe. But even then I have position. Like, how are you going to win this pot with ace jack? Like you just have to hope you flop an ace and a jack or whatever. So I don't like his call, but I specifically 4-bet him because I didn't think he would fold. And I also felt like if he did have jacks, queens, ace, king, kings, he might still think I'm nutted, but we're going to get it in if he has those hands, right? So I thought there was enough for those hands. And then again, if he does have some suited goofiness, like 8-9 suited, 8, he's not folding those to a min click. So I get extra value there. So even though I feel like I turned my cards face up with the 4-bet, it was still worth it in this spot against him because I didn't think he was going to fold. I thought he was still going to get cooler and get it in with worse hands. If he has aces, oh well, such is life. You know, I'm not folding my kings, period. But overall, if it was somebody else, let's say, for example, let's say it was Jason Kuhn who did that, I wouldn't have 4-bet Jason Kuhn. Because against Kuhn, he's going to muck that ace jack. And he's not necessarily getting, he wouldn't get it in with jacks either. He would just flat, even with ace king, or he's going to like play those more cautiously. Tom, I think, is a little more sloppy pre-flop because he has a big belief in his post-flop edge. I think it's a big mistake from his perspective, though, because the stack to pot ratio wasn't that deep, right? He's putting in 32,000. We've only got 100 behind, right? So there's going to be like 1.3x pot left behind to play, and you've got ace jack, and just what are you hoping? Like it's really, really an uphill battle to call there with ace jack.
You run it twice. Money gets in there on the flop. I think he check raises you all in. You call. You run it twice. I'm just curious. In general, do you always just run it twice? Is there any decision?
There's no strategy behind it. I think it's just fun. So I always run it twice just for the fun of it. There's no like. Obviously, it lowers your variance, right? When you run it twice, that's all it does. People say like, "Well, you'd only run it twice if you had." It doesn't matter what you have. The guy has 1 out, 14 out. It doesn't matter who's ahead, who's behind. Nobody gains an advantage when you run it twice. All you're doing is essentially cutting the stakes in half, right? Where you're creating 2 pots. So if you're flipping a coin, right, and you run it twice, you're very likely to just split the pot, right?
It's the easiest way to understand if somebody doesn't know what they're talking about. If somebody insists that one person or the other has an advantage running it twice, or some person doesn't want to run it twice for some reason because they're ahead or for being like that person just doesn't understand what's going on. It's real. It's the biggest tell there is.
A lot of it though. They think one guy, like I remember someone on Twitter saying something like, "Oh yeah, sure, he runs it twice when he's behind or something."
Right.
Like, what? It's so stupid. Like in some cases, it's almost like fuck it. If you have 1 out, right? There's a 200K pot and you've literally 1 out. Okay, you're basically, if you run it twice, you're just hoping to break even and like on the hand. But like so maybe in that case you go YOLO, fuck it, 1 time so you can win the whole pot. But generally speaking, from a mathematical perspective, like I think it's just an important thing. It doesn't matter at all. Frankly, the only thing that Barry Greenstein made a point of, which was reasonable and a good point, he said this.
I was going to bring this up. Yeah.
One of the reasons he doesn't run it twice is people will make much more aggressive plays when they know they can run it twice. So, for example, on the flop, if I have a flush draw, maybe I raise to get it in, knowing that I'm putting in 100K, which sounds like a lot, right? To try to win this pot with an aggressive, like all-in bluff. But even if I don't, all right, I get to run it twice. So a decent percentage of the time, I'm just, I'm going to get my money back because I'll hit one of them.
Yeah.
All the reasons are psychological, never mathematical. That's
for sure.
The easiest way to think of it.
Yeah. And it's funny, after this hand, Danny, you end up scooping and you've got a kind of a giddy smile on your face. And Ivy looks at you. Does he call you the worst winner ever or something? And there's
he said that to me many times before. He's like, you're the worst winner ever. Because like I get giddy and I'm smiling and I'm yoping and I'm like, like everything's fine now, You're
supposed to look like the guy from the Win Millions photo after you.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about that. Great segue.
Let's talk about that.
Guy wins the Win Millions. Tony Sinistash, it's somewhere in that range.
Acceptable.
I should be better than that, given that I'm a hockey fan. But he wins the Win Millions for $1.6 million, and there's a winner's picture taken of him. And he's kind of a backward turned chair, and he's got his arms over the chair like this. And, not everybody's different in how they sort of react or to get pictures taken. I'm sure there was a whole bunch of pictures taken. The one they selected was one where he wasn't super giddy about winning $1.6 million. Maybe he's exhausted, whatever. I don't know. He got shit from poker Twitter and saying this is
like some dude with like 100 followers too.
Well, and it was brutal. And it's like, what are you guys on about? Like the guy, how can you just roast him for this? It's not his responsibility to be.
Yeah, but I don't think that's what happened. This is what tilts me so much about this, right? Because the people nobody's criticizing him. I'm not criticizing him. First and foremost, I don't think that any poker player,
I don't think you,
but other people, not him, criticizing the picture. The guy who wrote the tweet, it's a funny meme style tweet that says like, this picture sums up exactly why, poker's not marketable anymore, right? The picture's terrible. This guy took other pictures and Cliff Josephine shared one where he was the conversation for me morphed into like, more of like a question of, people not celebrating today, or people thinking too cool for school, or that even like Ryan LaPlante saying that like people today think it's rude to celebrate. I think it's all cockamamie craziness. Number one, I don't think this guy did anything wrong. I don't think he owes it the poker world nothing, whatever. That's true, while also saying this picture does not sell poker as fun whatsoever. Okay. Again, they chose this picture, but there were other pictures, and there were pictures I saw of him like cheering. But I think people are rushed to decide what you mean by something. Because I was like, people were coming at me about my take and say, bad take, D-Negs. He's a nice guy. I'm like, I'm sure he's a great guy. I'm not criticizing him. I'm simply saying, if you're trying to sell poker as fun and you want to bring people in, seeing a guy like this falling asleep after winning 1.6 million, it's not the ad you want to put out there. Like, maybe take another picture, right? He doesn't have a responsibility to smile. He doesn't have to do none of that. But I think that's an important distinction. I don't blame any poker player who just plays the game, doesn't want to do interviews, doesn't want to do any of this. That's fine. I've never felt like people, you owe it to the game to do. No, I've never thought that, right? At all. But we can also say, if a group of people, all took that route, they wouldn't be helping, to grow the game, if you will. I don't think that's the case with this picture. I mean, this guy, but the picture was just, look at the picture. Come on. You have the picture, Ross? The picture's ridiculous.
You're the worst winner ever, so you would say that. So I don't know.
I'm just going to say that, like, I was really excited to play poker tournaments in a couple months and win 1.6 million, but now I totally don't want to win 1.6 million at all, because that picture just made me convinced that it wouldn't be fun to win 1.6 million dollars.
See? So we just lost somebody.
Yeah, I was ready to play, and I was like, nah, he doesn't seem very happy.
All right, let's move on to the next hand. This hand also features Mr. Daniel Negreanu. So folds to you, Daniel, in the middle position. You have the ace queen off. You raise to 1,000. It folds to the aforementioned JRB in the small blind with the king queen, who three bets in the small blind with the king queen to 4,000. Daniel, you call. The flop comes ace jack 9 rainbow, and it goes JRB 4,000. Daniel, you call. The turn, there's 24,000 in the pot, and the turn is a blank 4. JRB bets 14,000 into 24, and Daniel, you call, of course, nothing else you really going to do there. The river with 44,000 in it comes the bink 10 for JRB to hit his gut shot, and he bets 60,000 into 44,000. And Daniel, you kind of tank a little bit. You end up folding, but gross gut shot there in the river when he's donking into you a couple of times. B, you say to him, how many jacks do you have, JRB? And after thinking about it for a couple of minutes, first off, he stares at the pot. This is what I do, by the way. When somebody's talking to me on the river and I bet, I stare at the pot. And JRB was doing exactly what what I do. And but after a little while, he says, I have less than 3 jacks. And I don't know, Daniel, first off, if you want to talk about the hand, great. And then talk about his answer to your question.
So that was so there's a whole bunch of reasons why this is actually quite an easy fold. Now we'll talk about the verbal stuff first. Like, a general rule with tells is like when people are underselling their hand, right? That they're typically strong, right? So when he says I have less than 3 jacks, and the way that he said it, it was pretty obvious to me that he had better than that, right? That he had better than that. But again, that's not the meat of the hand. I'm curious, like, for you, okay, if you have my hand on that river, okay, you were 3-bet by JRB, okay, he bets flop. He actually, the pot size on the turn, he bet 14 into 16, right? It wasn't 24, which is a big bet, right? He bets big again on the turn. Now he overbets river, okay? You tell me, Terrence, Ross, Adam, you tell me, based on the 3-bet pre, flop bet, turn size, and river bet, what bluffs JRB shows up with on this river?
There's almost none.
None.
Sorry. Yeah, there's almost none just based on the 10 being on the river, right? Like, because the 10 just makes everything. Because even the hands that would have bluffed, like Queen 10 is basically the only Queen 10 suited is basically the only hand. There's only 3 combos of that remaining. He has to turn Queen 10 suited into bluff. That's
King 10 or Queen 10 suited are the 2.
Yeah, King 10 suited also. Yeah, so that's just not enough combos basically.
Well, do you you think, first of all, is JRB doing that? I don't really think so.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you hit the nail on the head. Like, So people, well, maybe he was bluffing with 7-8. Yeah, but that made it straight.
Yeah.
Maybe he was bluffing with 8 suited. Sure, but that made it straight. So what combination of cards would a guy like JRB decide to bluff there, right? So he and the overbet sizing, he's polarizing his range, saying he's very, very strong, or he's weak. He's not betting there with ace 9, right? So here's an interesting question. So I had ace queen, right? Does your analysis change about what you're going to do if you have ace 10? You make aces and 10s.
Not much. Like you bring one more hand.
I mean,
into
it's arguably even worse because now if the bluffs that we're talking about are king 10 and queen 10, and you have a 10, that's even worse. Arguably. Yeah.
Well,
I mean, it might be one of these weird situations where your hand gets better, but you're actually supposed to fold more often.
So the way you think, so ace 10 beats 2 hands that ace queen doesn't. Ace king and ace 9, right? Do we think JRB, when a 10 hits the river, is overbetting river with top and bottom, essentially, or just top pair king kicker?
Yeah, no.
Absolutely not. So that river, in some regard, and I think I said it sort of saved me because it made my fold on the river that much easier, right?
Yeah.
Because like there's literally no hand. JRB is not doing that with king 10 or queen 10 suited. He's not.
The number of combos that beat you are actually like staggering because it's not, you called one out, Jack, which seemed likely, but also all the straights you mentioned. So king, queen 8, 7, 8, but also like 9, aces, fours can just bink, like,
fours.
Yeah.
So when you think of the value range that he has, it's numerous. For an overbet size, he can have the king, queen as he did, ace, jack, pocket jacks, pocket aces, pocket nines. He can have all those hands. And then what bluffs can he have? Again, the bluffs that he had are 7, 8, shit like that. They got there. So all you're left with is JRB, like in the solver street saying, well, I got to show up with bluffs here. I'm going to turn queen 10 suited or king 10 into a bluff. No, I don't see it. My thinking, by the way, I tanked on the river. I wasn't tanking about calling. Okay? I wasn't. I was tanking about deciding whether or not, because I have a queen blocker, right? Whether I can turn my hand into a bluff and represent the king queen. Ultimately, I thought better of it, and I folded, thankfully, because he had the king queen. But you see now, when you break down the hand, aside from the like, whether you're an old school player, you make that lay down because you get the physical read. If you're a new school player, you make that lay down because you have all the information available to you.
Yeah.
It was actually an easy fold. But maybe in old days of high stakes poker, I would have fucking called because that's what I did.
I want to ask you, if you're in JRB shoes, Terrence, on the river when you make the nuts, I know you probably don't bet 3-bet king queen in the small blind and then bet. But if you make it on the river there,
well, I think Terrence might.
I think yeah, he think he played fine, right?
I think his 3-bet pre and his bet was good.
But do you overbet? I want to talk about what you would bet as far as sizing on the river, given Daniel has called the 3-bet, called the turn, called the flop, called the turn. Now, do you overbet that pot on the river? I feel like an overbet.
You're targeting almost specifically ace 9, ace 10, right, from Daniel, and like, yeah, it's hard there because you would have to be targeting ace 9, ace 10, and that seems like very little Daniel's range. I'm not sure. I'm not real good with the river bet sizing for value.
Okay, so I have a very strong opinion on what his sizing should have been, and it's definitely not overbet because, as you mentioned, Terrence, he's targeting such a very narrow range of hands, right? Like he's hoping I flop the set, or I have aces up. That's it.
You have to have flopped the set and played it slow, or aces up and played
set and played it slow. All those kind of things, right? But if I have all those hands, guess what I would do with those hands if he bets small? Raise every fucking one of them. If he made a blocker bet there where he bet 30% pot and I have ace 10,
yeah.
If I have 7, 8 and I made a straight, if I had any 2-pair combo, I'm probably making, let's say he bets the river, what would he bet on 14? Let's say he bets another 14 on the river for 15,000. I'm probably going to make it 40 or 45,000. So he's going to get that value and then he can re-raise me. And, obviously I would fold to the 3-bet jam, but he could induce and he could get me to, try to get a little value. Where what he also does with that, the beauty of the blocker there is for that price, he's getting my ace queen to call too.
Yeah.
Right? I'm going to call with ace queen if he bets 15. I have to because I'm getting laid like a ridiculous price. So he has the benefit of like inducing the raise, the benefit of getting extra call versus what he did, which is overbet, get greedy. Right? This is the thing about overbetting. This is before I was preparing for my Doug Polk match, this is the reason that my guys took over, but they wouldn't let me overbet. Okay. Because people generally don't overbet correctly, right? They don't do it in the right spots. They often just do it because they have a really, really good hand and they're like, screw it. I want more money. Here, let me bet a lot, right? They're not thinking about balancing their bluffs or anything like that. And JRB certainly wasn't. He was just being fucking greedy. He wanted max value, but he did it, but he bet an amount that, he got none.
Nice. All right. I wanted to ask you about that. So again, this is where I love JRB in games, because as he's pulling in this pot, he decides to tell a story, because you had just asked him, do you have all the jacks? And he's like, no, got less than. And that triggered a story for him. Ross, I hope you pulled the audio, because this is a great story.
Yeah.
There's this hand I saw at the Bellagio. I'll never forget it. It was like probably 15 years ago already. It's 10-20, but the guys are sitting with like 20,000 stacks each, and series of raises goes, and the guy goes all in, and it's clear that the guy is tanking with kings or queens. And he's like, man, you have aces, don't you? You have aces. And the guy didn't say a word the whole time, and finally it's a long tank, and the guy said, man, I'm so sure you have aces, I think I might fold. And then the guy finally says, I'm gonna tell you one thing right now. I don't have aces. The guy says, okay, call. And the guy turns over his kings. And then the guy who said he didn't have aces turns over aces. And I was like, well, we're playing poker, right?
Yeah. For sure.
I loved it.
That's one of the best stories I've heard on poker.
I think this is the charm of High Stakes Poker, the show, is that we can edit out all this footage, but we get all these behind the scenes type moments, that just the jibber jabber with Doyle and Phil Ivey, which I always think is fun, and JRB stories. It's like, this is the way poker needs to be marketed on a grander scale to a wider audience, stuff like this. Because this is the stuff that people will talk about, water cooler type moments.
Yeah, and it's even more. I mean, it's even. I always think about these things whenever, because I basically only play live poker once a year, and it's at the World Series, and then I'll sit down in a tournament like the 10K Limit Hold'em, which is basically like 70 people I know and like 20 others I don't. But you get all the stories about what's happening in the high stakes scene around the world. Because I'm not, other than doing the show with you, Daniel, like I'm not about that world. I don't know what's happening in the high limit section of resorts world. But you get this gossip and you get these stories, and it's just great to be around. And you're not going to get that level of detail when everybody's mic'd up and they know it's going to go to a wide audience. But it's just a little tiny taste of what that world is like. I agree with you 100%.
And he's so good at telling a story. Like there's none better, I don't think, at telling it. And he's got lots of stories because he's been playing in those games for so long too. But he tells a good story. All right. Yeah, and that's where he right after this he asked Doyle if he's read Super System. Which I don't. Is he leveling Doyle there? Is he like? Does he forget that Doyle wrote this Super System? Like, because then he starts talking about and you call him out, Daniel. He starts saying, I think he says, I never read anything that I write. And you're like, what the fuck did you write?
Yeah. No, but here's the thing. You think GRB was trolling? I think he was genuinely just asking if he actually read.
I thought it was too. That was the feeling I got. He was just confused.
He's like, did you read it? Like, I don't know, you wrote some of it, but did you read the thing? Because I'll be honest, like one of the books that I wrote, yeah, I don't know that I read it all. Like,
Yeah, that's funny. All right, so the next hand is Doyle in the cutoff. He makes it 1,500 with Ace King. This is an interesting hand to talk about. Daniel, you're involved. Again, Doyle in the cutoff, 1,500 with Ace King. Tom on the button with the Ace 3 of Hearts calls. Daniel, you're in the big blind, and you 3-bet to 6,500. What did you have in this hand again? I forgot to write down what you had in this hand.
I don't even know what hand you're talking about.
Phil Brunson calls, Tom Dwan calls, flops King 10, King Queen 10, 2 diamonds.
Oh, you thought this hand was interesting?
Okay, guess it wasn't. Let's skip this hand. Why don't we skip it? What did you
Please
have?
put that at the end of the show, Ross. That was
What did you have?
What did I have? I had Ace 10, I think, or some shit.
This was just fantastic.
Okay, we got it. All right, I was doing this while I was at work. I'm sorry. All right, all right, Ross, cut this out.
Please leave it in. No, I will pay you $50 if you leave that in.
Yeah, leave that in.
All right. Boring hand. Adam fucks up hand in. All right. Episode 4. Let's move on. Episode 4. Hopefully I got this one right, or a couple right here. We have a completely new crew for episode 4, which
there's a good hand in this one, and you actually have it in the show notes. So let's talk about that one.
Okay. Well, first let's talk about the crew. So Garrett Adelstein, who the boys have a hard time pronouncing, Dwan Liu, Doyle Brunson, Jennifer Tilley, Patrick Antonius, also in episode 4, Krish Menon, not sure who he is, and Tom Dwan. The first hand, Garrett Adelstein raises with what is he raising?
Jack 8 offsuit or something.
Something
pretty random.
And Dwan Liu 3 bets with the king jack of spades in position. Patrick Antonius calls with 3s in the big blind. So he's called the 3-bet cold with 3s. And Garrett folds. So it's heads up, Dwan in position with king jack of spades, and Patrick in the big blind with the 3s. The flop comes 8-7 deuce rainbow. Patrick checks. Dwan continues, and Patrick calls. The turn is a 5, so it's now 8-7 deuce 5 rainbow. Goes check, check. The river's a queen, and Patrick checks, trying to keep the pot small with the 3s. He's got basically a 4th pair. Dwan now bets 20,000 into 15,000, and Patrick you could tell he's kind of wanting to call, but he ends up folding. And a whole bunch of questions here. First off, when she checks the turn, bets the river, obviously she's repping some kind of queen, but she overbets the pot.
Well, she's repping just ace, queen, kings, and aces. That's it.
Which is a strange, obviously with the 5 and the turn bringing some straight draws, it's a strange line with aces. I don't know.
It's not that strange. No, checking the turn with the aces is totally fine. What doesn't work about this, which I think is a big mistake that she makes, it worked, but her sizing on the river is asking for punishment because she's betting 20 into 15 in a spot. And this is a dangerous game people play where she doesn't have the range advantage here at all. If I'm Patrick there, my first instinct isn't call. Nope. My first instinct is, okay, she has one fucking pair. Good luck eating all of it with one pair, right? One of the things that I talk about a lot in my streams and my hand breakdowns is if you are going to and this week, again, we're talking about overbetting, incorrectly. When you're overbetting, you should be doing so in spots where you have the clear range advantage, right? And in this case, obviously Patrick called with 3s. She checked back the turn, eliminates decent part of her range, and now firing this queen big. It's like screaming one pair hand where Patrick can absolutely, he called with 3s. He can have 5s, he can have deuces, he can have 7s, he could have 8s if he's going to play that. First of all, he shouldn't have called the raise with the 3s in the first place, right? And unless she thinks that he's folding a queen, here's the other problem too. That queen, that kind of hits him a lot because one of the hands that he's going to call a 3-bet with is going to be ace queen, right? He's not folding that hand. So I didn't like her sizing. It ended up working but I think Patrick's first instinct would be there or should be there to one of the things that you do with check raises on the river is you take a part of your range that has showdown value, okay, that you can check, and if the guy checks, you just win. But if you check and the guy bets, you can't really call with the 3s. It's kind of awkward. So you go, you know what? I'm going to use the top part of my showdown value range that I checked and turn that into the bluff. And I think in that case, if I'm Patrick, I'm giving her a 1-pair type hand at best. And I don't think it's a bad idea to just put this is something that if you think of a guy like Michael Adamo and you made this bet against Adamo's going to break it down and go, oh, no. You're going to have to eat my entire stack. So if you're doing it, you better be doing it to just call it off because, he's not going to let you get away with that.
Or I guess you would, once in a while you're going to run into 3 queens, I guess is the idea, but that's okay. It's going to work so often that once in a while you're going to look stupid because you're going to run into 3 queens.
Yeah, you're going to run into 3 queens, which is actually less likely than aces or kings.
I agree.
Queens bet the turn way more. And besides, there's only, 3 combos of that, as you know. But again, queens and jacks are much more vulnerable, so they typically bet the turn more. Aces can slow play that turn, and kings as well, so she could have those. But her having, that's the thing. Like you said, when you got to think of what you can rep. She can't rep a straight. She can't rep a set. She can't rep anything she can't rep 2 pair really. But Patrick can rep so much more. So in these spots, just get your head around the idea that you have to first recognize who has the strongest hands in their range, me or them. When it's me, overbets work. When it's not, don't do it.
All right.
Good advice.
And then something happens here in the middle of the episode 4 of the season. I thought was strange. I wanted to ask Daniel about here. They institute the 30-second clock, and they didn't have that, I believe, in the first few episodes. But was there a reason? Do you think they did it, or they just?
It just came down to Garrett was chatting, and Garrett, I guess he took time in a hand, and he's like, I'm just used to playing with the shot clock. He brought up the shot clock. He's usually used to playing with the 30-second clock. And Doyle's like, well, put it in. So they all just agreed to put the shot clock in. And, they wanted to make that part of like the thing going forward, because on later episodes when there's a new crew. But, it's only necessary if you're dealing with like some specific players who are super slow. And, to be honest, in this show, for most of the people that are chosen, they don't play that slow. Everyone plays pretty quickly. So it's not necessary.
And it's a cash game, so it doesn't matter that much if somebody takes a couple minutes on a hand. That's a big hand.
It's an edited show, right? They can edit out all the stuff.
It's interesting because, so on that time bank thing, just like to show you, like in these high rollers, these guys will shoot every possible angle imaginable. Okay, like one of the angles they'll shoot, Sean Winter, Sam Soverall, not surprising, they both shoot this angle where they literally use their time banks. Okay, when they're in the small blind. In this, let's say there's like a minute 7 on the clock. Okay, they're in the small blind with 7 deuce off. They just sit there. They burn 2 time banks of value to do this, so that the next hand, when it's their button, the blinds go up. I've seen them do it when they were heads up. They were literally heads up doing it, making sure that the big blind goes up on you, because obviously there's a little bit of EV. I'm like, you guys will fucking run across town to pick up $7 and you're playing games, right? So this actually prompted a rule change. We created a rule change because all these fucking guys were doing it. Sean Perry, all of them. So what we had to do, what we created now is with 5 minutes left in the level, we draw for the number of hands remaining between like 2 and the highest number of players at the table, so that there's no longer value to stall in that last 5 minutes. And we just play it out because these guys will do that. Like if you think about it, it is an edge, right? Like other people, especially with short stacks, like them having to pay higher blinds is good for you, especially when there's ICM calculations when you're in the money and there's laddering going on.
And putting the next big blind in massive tilt. Speaking of Sam Soverall, it reminds me of one of the funniest things that I've seen in the last few months. Some Poker News, I think it was Poker News reporter, came up to you. This was when that live or that Hustler casino cheating thing happened, and somebody comes up to you, Daniel, and asks, "Who's the best cheater you've ever played with?" And Sam Soverall's at the table, and you're like, "I think it's Sam." And I was just like, wow, that was just like a dagger. Like he just,
yeah,
that was
like,
great.
I'll tell you this. Sam is a throwback to characters I remember, like Sam Grizzle and them, because he's actually like the funniest guy in the room, but none of the jokes or none of the things he says are remotely appropriate, and they are not woke approved. Like if he was a man that had any reason to be canceled, he would have been canceled a whole many years ago. He's very, very vulgar with his jokes. He does this. Okay, I'm gonna tell you what he did. This is so ridiculous. He beats a guy in a pot, and he knows him, right? He knows the guy. He beats him in a pot. Then he sends him a WhatsApp message, right? After he beats him in the pot. The guy opens the WhatsApp message. It's his balls and his dick just like stretched out.
That's hilarious.
He sends him a dick pic. After he beats this guy with like a 2-outer, sends him a thing. He opens it up, WhatsApp, boom. There's Sam Schlong right there in your face.
Jesus.
Yeah, there you go.
Not about slow rolls. That's not taking it to the next level.
Oh boy, yeah, cracks me up.
All right, so episode 5 will be released next week. We'll break that one down as well. And a couple more things. So we're going to keep it to a tight hour today, but we've got a couple more quick things to talk about. Jason Kuhn on Twitter had a bit of a take, and he said he was talking about live poker rooms banning online cheaters, and he said there needs to be higher stakes repercussions for people who are continually caught cheating in online poker. It's in the best interest of the entire poker community. In my opinion, major live tournament stops should share a blacklist of online poker's worst cheaters. Thoughts on that, guys? It started a lot of speculation and discussion. Terrence, what do you think there?
I think it's hard in practice. I mean, I like the idea behind it. I think the sort of idea is like, let's get these guys who we know cheated, like get them out of the game. But it's hard. Like, what is the threshold of proof that you need? Like, is it just that, like, because we all know, like, okay, Mike Postle cheated. You know that we know Russ
We're
Hamilton.
going to get sued so hard by Mike Postle's lawyer for the defamation of character. Oh,
we know Russ Hamilton cheated. Like, what is the threshold that you have to pass? Like, and how bad does the offenses be? Like, Justin Bonomo multi-accounted in 2000. Are we kicking him out? Like, what are we doing here? Like how do you decide what the rule is? You know.
And then the bigger problem on that, like the reason that this isn't doable, the bigger problem is that these tours, they don't really have it's the venue itself, right? Like a guy named, I think, Sam Panica, he's barred from the World Series of Poker, and he's barred from the Rio, but it's not because of like the poker people. It's because Caesars, like, you know what I mean? They make those decisions. When they bar somebody, they bar somebody. So even if even if the tour said, well, that guy's a cheat, and like the casino's like, well, he didn't cheat us or anything like that. He's not done anything here. He's allowed to be here. So it's anyway, and you'd have to get all these different factions to work together. I think better, you know, along the lines of what Jason wants to do is maybe we get to a point where people are very public about what we know. So these people get a little bit shamed for some of the things that they've done in the past or whatever the case may be. But I don't know. I don't have the answers to this. It's an unfortunate thing that anytime you're talking about something that's for money, people are going to try to find ways to cheat.
Indeed. All right. Moving on, we've got the U.S. Poker Open as part of the PokerGo Tour starting tomorrow at the Aria with the 10K No Limit Hold'em, 12 events, culminating with a 50K buy-in on March 27th. It goes from I think there's 5 or 6 10K events, and then a couple of $15,000 buy-ins, 3 25Ks, and the 50K in event 12. Daniel, I'm guessing you are going to take part in some of these. And then there's also some news that the PokerGo Tour has a $500,000 free roll.
Yeah, let me get to that stuff because I know the details on that one. Okay. First and foremost, I'm not going to be playing some of them. Okay. I'm going to be playing all of them because I'm going for that bald eagle trophy because I love that trophy. It's ridiculous. It's so funky, super cool. But yeah, as you said, you know, the U.S. Poker Open. This U.S. Poker Open is different than a lot of the other ones because the U.S. Poker Open has mixed game. We got a big bet mix. We got pot limit Omaha. We got an 8 game. So that actually, you know, bodes well for me since I'm somebody who's going to play all those as well, and I'm very, very good at them. Let me kill this.
Did you say pot limit Omaha was a mixed game?
Well, you know, it's a game that's, you know, of mixed descent. Okay, so I'm gonna go hard at the U.S. Poker Open. It usually draws pretty well. But as you were talking, so you were speaking to like the bigger picture. PokerGo Tour is something that originally, when it was announced, it was a $500,000 free roll. Okay, at the end of the year, where the top 6 point getters throughout the year would play winner take all, which is super exciting and super unique because it would be different than what you normally see. Because normally when you watch the final table of, you know, a tournament, you're seeing ICM decisions being made where the short stacks are folding way too much, the big stacks are doing whatever they want. When there's no ICM at play, now people can just play some fucking poker. The other thing about this idea with the 6-handed was going to be super deep. Like the chip leader having, you know, up like maybe 300 big blinds and the short stack having like 80. So it's an opportunity to see that. So from my perspective, I'm like, this is going to be the most fascinating poker show of the year at the end of the year in December. What they decided to do, where it was originally just 6 people, is they decided to expand it now to 21. So the top 21 point earners on the PokerGo Tour, which will probably be automatically whoever wins the World Series Poker main event, will crack the top 10 because that's going to be worth a shit ton of points, top 21. And what we'll do is we're going to have 3 tables of 7 all deep with coverage from the early stages as well. And I came up with an idea that they're going to implement as well where you keep your chips, right? So if you get like 3,400 points, you'll have 3.4 million in chips. If you ended with 1,800 points, you get 1.8 or whatever the case may be. What we're going to do is the chip leader will be at table 1. Second in chips will be at table 2. Third in chips will be at table 3. Then fourth at table 3. Fifth, sixth, like a snake. So you're spreading the chips out all evenly, and you give an advantage to the chip leaders, which is what you want to reward them for a really good year. So my goal was to get in the top 6 originally, and I still is to have some chips. But now that it's going to be 21, like I'm a lock to get into 21. But I really think this is going to be for the viewer the most fun style poker because you're going to see. Because one of the things I think people get bored by, like with these final tables and the ICM spots, is when one guy has 2 big blinds. It's just the chip leader raising every hand and then everyone else just folding because they have to, right? Well, that's not going to be the case with this one. And it's going to be deep stack too. So really looking forward to that. And I think it's great. $500,000 is a good amount of money. You know, we talk about, you know, there's no real sponsorship. There's no reason to market yourself, all this kind of stuff. Well, what the PokerGo studio does is, aside from the $500K they're giving away here, U.S. Poker Open, if you win that, you get an extra $50,000. If you show up on time for all the events, you pay no rake.
Wow.
So it's like a really good deal. They're doing a lot of things to give back to poker players. So if you're in town, you want to play the U.S. Poker Open, come on down. It's a great environment. It's like literally the best place to play poker. It's like the best room ever. Everything's clean, and the lighting is good. Everything.
All right, that's going to wrap it up for the poker discussion.
Daniel's got to plug the GG Masters. 5 million. Go.
Oh my God, you're right. Because you know what? This is crazy, but it's 5 days away. I got a nice head of hair right now, quite long. Okay, and I've put this beautiful head of hair right now on in jeopardy because I don't think this is going to hit the guarantee. I think it's impossible for it to hit guarantee. The GG Masters, March 20th. You guys have 5 days. I should tell you not to play because I don't want to cut my hair. But in 5 days on Sunday, $150 buy-in. No rebuys with like real poker, as you guys say. None of these guys firing multiple bullets with like super late reg, building up big stacks. $150, $5 million guaranteed. They don't hit the guarantee, I'm safe. If they do hit the guarantee, I'm going to actually shave my head. And I don't want to, but I do. You know what I mean? It's
what about the beard?
Huh?
What about the beard? Head and beard?
That would be weird. I could go with that look, right? Totally shaved head and the beard. I didn't say anything about the beard, so maybe I could keep the beard. My wife likes the beard. She's not going to like the shaved head. I know that. But
when was the last time you had a shaved head? I've seen
I don't know, but it's not going to happen, guys. Let's be real. So if you are available to play on GG Poker Sunday, March 20th, this is a can't miss tournament. I think there's going to be a lot of extra value. And even if they did hit the guarantee, you're looking at a massive, huge prize pool for a $150 investment. You can go to GG Poker now, even before that, and play a whole bunch of satellites for as little as like $1.50 to try to win your way in to the $150 ticket and get yourself printed on the way to, piece of a $5 million prize.
Please register. I want to see Daniel looking like Mr. Clean out there.
Just wear a hat.
If you want and you want to get in this tournament and you can breathe and blink twice, you probably should get on the staking software and get yourself staked, right?
That's it too, right? You can do that within the client on GG Poker.
Yeah.
Obviously, people are going to take a look at your resume, and if you're really, really bad, they might not want a piece. But if you're decent, you throw it out there. I think a lot of people will buy up a piece. So if 150 is too much, maybe sell half your action. You're in for 75.
Yeah, it depends what the overlay is. If the overlay is like a ton, you can take a negative EV guy, right?
For sure.
All right, so head on over there Sunday to GG Poker. Daniel, you better watch out. The Vancouver Canucks are on the heels of the Las Vegas Knights, who got torched.
Who cares? We're both not going to make the playoffs.
I'm not sure about that. So there's a chance. We've got an outside chance.
So you're saying there's a chance.
I'm not going to offer you 100-1. But
you're saying there's a chance. I mean, listen, Dallas has 4 fucking games in hand.
Lost again tonight.
Big deal. They got plenty of games and they're good. Vegas is reeling right now. They'll need a miracle to make the playoffs. But Vancouver, they're actually going to be playing each other like 3 times, I think. Vegas, Vancouver. So that, like, if one of the teams scoops all 3 of those, it'll give them a chance. But I think both teams are in bad shape.
What's going on in Vegas land? You got the hookups there.
What's going on in Vegas? Name a team in the NHL. Name one team in the NHL that can have 9 regulars out of the lineup, including your starting goalie, and be a winning team. There just doesn't exist. You're missing, and they're not missing like fringe guys. They're missing like regulars. Talk about Mark Stone. Pacioretty's out. Riley Smith, our best, most responsible two-way forward. Braden McNabb, Alec Martinez, Brett Howden, who's been like really powerful on the fourth line. Matthias Janmark, Robin Lehner, the goalie. I mean, it's insane how many injuries they've had this year. And there's other problems within the team. But like, listen, no team in the league that had someone made the comparable. Like, imagine if Colorado had Rantanen, Landeskog, Kadri, McKinnon, Day, and like all those guys out. Like, they wouldn't be good either. You know what I mean? So it's been a weird, but you have to say some part of the makeup of the team in Vegas, they're older and they've been through the battles, making deep playoff runs. So it doesn't look good. Like, cause there's no timetable on when these guys are back, and without them, this lineup can't win. They just can't win.
How bad's Leonard's injury?
We don't know, right? It's a shoulder thing. So, I mean, he could probably maybe play, but it's dangerous to play. Realistically, I've been listening to, something. Realistically, they're very close to just what they should do at the deadline, which is only 6 days away, is go, all right, guys, we're going to pack it in for this season because this isn't the year based on all the shit that's been going on. Let's get set for next year. Let's get rid of Dadonov. Obviously, they're going to move Riley Smith. Let's start making those moves at the deadline because this team ain't winning shit this year. It's over.
Yeah. All right. People were bored. We put that in at the end where hockey guys are hanging out still. Maybe the poker guys are gone. So thanks to everybody out there for getting to listen to our podcast. Thanks to you guys for getting together to do one. And we will do one shortly. And good luck, everybody, in the meantime.